Battlefield 2042, it's not over yet, ladies and gentlemen. The updates continue to come in. Today I'm going to be talking about a response that EA provided in regards to a report that stated that EA blamed partially Halo and the way the multiplayer of that launched, and they attributed that to Battlefield 2042's failure to a degree. But first, as I tend to start these kinds of videos, look at the player numbers. They're even worse than they were last time, with a 24-hour peak of a measly 2,470 players. You look at, look at the past couple of months here. You can see the big rise, obviously, sort of closer to launch, and then just that steady decline that is now culminated in average players being at less than 2,000. This is not good. I genuinely do not know how they're going to bring this back. EA continues to claim they're going to hunker down and work on it, and if they somehow manage to pull a miraculous comeback, then great, but this feels like a doomed project at this point. I've seen, better launch live services that were still disastrous launches fall by the wayside. I don't know why Battlefield 2042 would be any different. Reviews have gotten a little worse, overwhelmingly negative. Still, it used to be at 14% in terms of recent reviews. It's now down to 13%, so not faring much better there. The petition continues to get support, even though people know it's not going to do much, but it's, generating some buzz, 225,594 signatures. But yes, if EA wasn't facing enough backlash for how poorly they handled the launch of Battlefield 2042, more negative PR came their way with this exclusive article by Tom Henderson, in which he reported that EA had this internal meeting called a town hall meeting, where they kind of gather the various staff members and kind of have this all hands on meeting where they discuss post-mortem and stuff like that. And with Battlefield 2042, they did cite that the game lacked polish and that there were design decisions that players didn't enjoy. I guess the absence of legacy features such as a basic scoreboard and voice chat, I guess that's now deemed design choices that players didn't enjoy rather than basic features that should inherently come with a game like Battlefield. But here's the bit that kind of got people talking, where Tom Henderson noted that Battlefield 2042's launch and patches meant the game was stable and the early critical reception was good. That's what Meal continued to say during that meeting. However, according to EA, things took a turn, and that turn was clear as throat, the surprise release of Halo Infinite multiplayer. I wish I was joking. According to Meal, the comparison between both games was not favorable because Halo Infinite was a very polished title, whereas Battlefield 2042 contained bugs and wasn't polished, basically saying Halo Infinite disrupted Battlefield 2042's ability to be successful because it turned out to be a better game. How dare they? People made fun of this on Reddit. You'll see plenty of memes like this: DICE kills Battlefield franchise. DICE, why would Halo do this? You've got this one right here, don't be sad, that's just how it works out sometimes, Master Chief right here. Now, EA has gotten wind of this narrative that the company has blamed Halo Infinite, at least partially, for Battlefield 2042's failures. And speaking to PC Gamer, they've tried to present a different picture, saying that the words are being misrepresented and that that's not exactly what happened, and just trying to say we didn't blame Halo Infinite. That is the wrong interpretation, the wrong context of how the meeting went. And so this is the article in question. EA denies blaming Halo Infinite for Battlefield 2042's problems. Then scrolling down, you'll find the quote in question. This is a statement that came from EA Communications VP John Riesberg, who said in a statement to PC Gamer, quote, "Those stories are not accurately capturing the discussion and the context, which was an in-depth and very humble internal conversation about the recent Battlefield launch. It was about key learnings and actions we're taking, not blaming external factors." Except the words spoken don't really suggest that. Now, I guess it's harder to say for sure if, this article, if Tom Henderson was being entirely 100% accurate, because we haven't heard the recording of this, and so I guess there's room for misinterpretation, but that doesn't really seem to be the case. Tom Henderson has been on top of Battlefield 2042 and covering what's going on behind the scenes, and he's been kind of on point for a lot of the times, if not most. And now PC Gamer has come out and corroborated what Tom Henderson reported, because they were sent the recording of the portion of EA's meeting where it seemed to imply that EA was on some level saying if it wasn't for Halo Infinite, Battlefield 2042 would have performed significantly better commercially. So here's what this portion of the article reads like. As Tom Henderson at CIPHER stated, a voice reportedly belonging to EA COO Laura Meal describes Battlefield 2042's launch from the publisher's perspective, saying that signs were positive on the weekend of the early special edition release. The game was stable. I don't know if that's a word that can ever be associated with Battlefield 2042. Initial critical reception was positive. Have you seen the meta scores? Critical reception was trepidatious at best, but user reviews were always kind of very on the negative side of things. And day-to-day player retention looked strong. Retention's one thing, but their sentiment is another. Of course, there was going to be some initial retention at launch, but we all know how badly that went with the game now sitting at, less than 3,000 players, just less than 2,500 players playing concurrently in the last 24 hours. However, after an initial strong start, basically is what Milo said, things started to turn after that weekend, says the voice. This is directly from the recording. This is an interpretation. This is literally word for word what Laura Meal from EA said. The following Monday, Halo did a surprise release of their multiplayer mode, and their game was very polished, the speaker says. It was a small segment of the game, but it was very polished and was not favorable comparison to our experience, given some of the bugs and polish issues we had. I don't know why Halo specifically is brought up. I guess it is in the same genre. It is a first-person shooter, so there is some competition there. But here's the thing. Battlefield 2042 was not just unfavorable to compare to Halo Infinite, it was unfavorable to compare to basically every other game that came out within that same time period, because this game was in that much of a worse state compared to so many other titles, AA, AAA, indie that came out within that November or fall or winter holidays 2021 sort of time frame. And so bring up Halo specifically and saying, man, that surprise launch really kind of did a 180 on the situation, that's completely denying EA's own mistakes. This thing didn't take a 180. It was at a 180 from the beginning, and it was because EA messed up that badly. And EA talks about how this has been a humble conversation, that this is all being taken out of context, but there is no humility in not issuing refunds when you know you messed up. If you feel any shame, you would have done what CD Projekt did, where they said, all right, we messed up with Cyberpunk 2077, refunds, no questions asked, it's happening. We're just gonna, within this time period, anyone who asks for a refund will get it. They would have done something like that if they really felt any shame, if this was really a humble conversation. And sure, they did mention that they did not, meet player expectations when it comes to polish and design elements and all these things. And I really hate the term did not meet player expectations, because not only is it on some level softballing the fact that the company completely messed up, underlyingly, I feel like it does on some level imply that the players at fault for having these expectations, and it wasn't that they messed up and failed to meet base quality standards, it's just that they put out a product and it just happened to not meet player expectations, rather than Battlefield 2042 as a game just falling way short of what is acceptable as a game release. EA has never come out and said, we completely messed up and there is no excuse. They've given excuses like, well, Halo came out and surprised us with how polished it was. But every other game, again, was polished. And so to directly point out Halo Infinite as a contributor to diminishing sales and diminishing reception, like, no. Just look introspectively for once. Just look at Battlefield 2042 for what it is, a failure of a game both in technical polish and what Battlefield fans expect out of the series. And all this looks even less like a humble conversation when you look at something that Laura Meal said during that meeting. Meal acknowledged that player expectations have changed when it comes to live service games, and that it wasn't the right choice to remain anchored to the company standards in comparison to previous DICE games. Notice that still on some level there is like an underlying blame of the players having a certain amount of expectations, but the reality is, and I said this in my previous video, player expectations haven't changed. The expectation of buying a product and getting something that works at launch, that isn't an expectation that has changed in the last few years. People's tolerance for broken, shitty products, that's what's changed. That's what people are becoming less and less tolerant of, because it keeps happening and it keeps happening, and there's only so many times you can mess up and say, whoopsies, this won't happen again, and then it happened again. before people get sick and tired and completely lose trust in your capabilities. And that's what's happened with the Battlefield series. People don't trust that there is a future for the series. Hell, EA on some level seems kind of hesitant to say that this is going to be a big part of the company's future successes. And look, I do hope Battlefield can come back. I do hope that the leadership change with Vince Zampella taking over will have a major effect. And recently, Call of Duty seems to have acknowledged that they need more time to make these games. They're breaking their annual cycle for the first time. There's no new Call of Duty coming out in 2022. The next Call of Duty game, which is set to be Modern Warfare 2, is coming out in 2023. Battlefield 2042 got a similar treatment, though. It did get an extra year, but even then, it failed to meet expectations. It clearly should have been delayed longer, but EA refused to do so. Look, you can talk about all of the humble learnings you won and whatever, but at the end of the day, history has repeated itself far too many times, and you have not once just said, we messed up and there is no excuse. You keep giving out these excuses that are nonsensical, specifying Halo as a contributing factor instead of just your game being bad compared to literally every other game, or not every single other game, but many of the major releases during that time period. Like, look at yourself and stop, looking for other factors to sprinkle in there, because that then turns into an excuse instead of just a humble introspection, which is what you claim to have had. I mean, the fact that employees within EA clearly weren't satisfied by this based on the fact that they did leak this information goes to suggest that probably employees on some level feel like the conversation that was had there felt tone deaf and felt like it was on some level trying to blame these extraneous factors instead of just acknowledging that EA is not doing things right as far as managing teams go, managing release dates, managing realistic expectations, and giving teams enough time and autonomy, all of these factors that contributed to Battlefield 2042 being what it is. One of the most disastrous AAA game launches of all time, and one of EA's worst disasters, which is saying a lot because EA's had so many already, and for Battlefield 2042 to somehow top all of those to a level, maybe not as bad as Anthem, or maybe worse, I don't know, but the fact that it's at least at a similar level and that this keeps happening is freaking maddening, because they have a treasure trove of franchises that people love, and time and again, this keeps happening, man. And, just talking about Halo is not going to win any favors. But I just felt this was worth highlighting because it's not just important to gauge the state of a game, but also the state of the mentality of the company behind that game and how they're communicating and all these things. Like, all of that informs potentially what learnings will be had. And, stuff like this just makes it feel like EA won't learn. With 2042, this was supposed to be the game where they would learn from their past mistakes, where they were supposed to give this game enough time to, realize its full potential. They didn't do that. And with this latest internal meeting, I hope something comes of it. But it just, and now the denial itself of like, no, we never blamed Halo Infinite. We had a very humble conversation. It's taken way out of context. Word for word, it's what Meal said. We can literally see it transcribed, word for word, verbatim. This is directly from the recording. This is what was said. And if you can't even admit that you said what you said, then, it's hard for me to believe that they'll actually fully admit their mistakes and very deeply look at those mistakes and really go a long way to correct them instead of prioritizing monetization and live service bullshit and all these like business schemes. It doesn't seem like EA will ever really truly prioritize quality and what customers actually want, what fans of a series want. It feels like they'll always leave that as secondary to their business goals, what they want to normalize, the schemes and all that crap. So look, I'm not entirely confident that there's a whole lot of humility happening within EA. The only humility that they've experienced is the fact that they didn't make as much money. So yeah, my confidence in EA and the Battlefield series really is at an all-time low. Like, how many more times can they get away with something like this? I guess we'll find out with future releases. But yeah, in the meantime, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on EA's attitude towards Battlefield 2042, the things that they've said about it and its performance, and what you think the future holds. Do you think they can somehow improve? Do you think 2042 will finally slap them out of their delusional, tone-deaf state of mind? Or do you think this trend will continue with future Battlefield entries? Let's hope not, but it is hard to be in any way, shape, or form optimistic about EA in this day and age. But that's my take. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.